Bonsoir. Women belong to all places where decisions are being made. Tels ont été les propos de Ruth Bader Ginsburg une première fois en 2009. Née en 1933, décédée en 2020, avocate, juriste, juge américaine, membre de la Cour suprême aux États-Unis et que deuxième femme à y siéger après Sandra Day O'Connor, une vraie championne des droits des femmes, une pionnière tout court. Eh bien, c'est dans ce sens-là nous voilà aujourd'hui réunis au premier Empowering Journey Summit organisé par les CAVL, organisé en étroite collaboration avec le méga ministère de l'égalité des genres et de la diversité et de l'IMS ou IMS Luxembourg Inspire More Sustainability. Monsieur Jean Ringo, président du conseil d'administration, Monsieur Marc Wengler, directeur général, Mesdames et Messieurs, chers et chers invités, bienvenue toutes et tous donc à ce premier rendez-vous et ces quelques heures que nous avons déjà et que nous allons encore passer ensemble ici dans la Chambre de commerce pour le premier Empowering Journey Summit des CAVL et ce à l'occasion de la Journée internationale des femmes. Avec un programme qui se veut dense, intense, enrichissant, inspirant et motivant, en des temps où le monde à tout nouveau est déboussolé, déstabilisé et où les droits et surtout aussi l'influence des femmes sont à nouveau en train de se dégrader. Empowering Journey, mais qu'est-ce que cela veut dire? Pour les CAVL, c'est un programme qui a commencé en 2021 par la signature de l'accord Women in Rail. Ensuite, en 2022, c'était le début ou le lancement de la démarche Women at CAVL et l'Empowerment Journey, donc en 2024. Et comme le nom l'indique, c'est une journée. Ce n'est pas un one-shot sans piqûre de rappel, parce qu'il faut une vision, un moyen à long terme, un investissement dans l'avenir, mais surtout un buy-in de plein de personnes, femmes et hommes, de CEO et surtout de leaders. Mon nom est Cindy Nonweiler et j'ai le grand plaisir et l'honneur d'être votre modératrice donc cette soirée. Et je vais veiller à ce que vous n'ayez pas besoin de 10 cafés pour rester réveillés, car je vous promets que la soirée et le programme continuent à donc être particulièrement riches en inspiration et en échange. Ne gaspillons donc plus de temps et commençons tout de suite par notre programme et n'oubliez pas par la suite de liker également nos contributions sur LinkedIn. Normalement, Madame la ministre, Juriko Bakes, donc ministre de l'égalité des genres et de la diversité, aurait dû faire l'allocution maintenant ici, mais comme vous le savez très bien, le monde est assez tourmenté ces derniers temps et qu'elle a également donc la tutelle du ministère de la Défense, elle a un imprévu, un impératif d'une dernière minute, parce que vous le savez peut-être, il y a un deuxième avion qui va atterrir ici dans quelques minutes au Findel pour rapatrier donc les gens et les évacuer qui étaient à Dubaï. Et comme elle veut faire l'accueil là-bas, donc elle vous envoie toutes ses excuses, mais elle a quand même aussi dit que si elle parvient à le faire, elle viendra vers la fin de ce programme vers 21h. Donc c'est pour ça qu'on a donc dû improviser un peu maintenant. Et je propose que nous venons donc tout de suite à notre keynote avec une personne qui est encore assez jeune pour le parcours qu'elle a déjà accompli. Elle est la fondatrice du projet Let's Just Be Imperfect Ladies, qui encourage les femmes à mettre en avant un style de leadership authentique et féminin, empathie, intelligence émotionnelle, chaleur humaine. Conférencière, présentatrice et formatrice, elle accompagne les dirigeants sur la voie d'une plus grande ouverture et de diversité dans les instances de décision et partage son expérience sur les scènes internationales. Auparavant, elle a travaillé pendant 10 ans comme conseillère principale en communication à la Commission européenne et son dernier rôle, elle occupait le poste donc de rédactrice de discours avec le président à l'époque, M. Jean-Claude Juncker. Et c'est pour ça que nous voilà avec les liens vers le Luxembourg. Aujourd'hui, elle enseigne également la communication politique au Collège d'Europe à Bruges. Et je dis bienvenue à Helene Banner.
Merci. Merci, Sandy.
Helene, es freut mich wirklich sehr, dass du heute Abend bei uns bist und dass du jetzt uns was erzählst über Empowerment und Leadership. The floor is yours.
Vielen, vielen Dank,
Gerne.
Sandy. Merci à tous de m'accueillir aussi chaleureusement. Good evening, everybody. CFL group leaders, business leaders, change makers, optimists here in the room. It's such a pleasure for me to come in from Berlin to be here with you tonight. Congratulations on this summit, empowering her journey, to the CFL group, also to the Ministry for Gender Equality and Diversity, because you have inspired me already today. Maybe let's take a moment to look around in the room. Maybe you can also look left and right, maybe behind you. Look at us here. For me, us coming together here tonight for gender equality, for women empowerment, for diversity, equity, inclusion, is already a statement. At a time when women's rights, women's representations are openly questioned, attacked, and even rolled back in some governments in the world, at a time when women's voices are silenced again in many countries, online and on the streets, and at the time when some companies, also here in Europe, have now stopped their female leadership programs, their diversity programs, and their gender equality goals, I think you are an inspiration. The fact that we come here together is a statement. We stand here together for openness, for togetherness, for solidarity, for keeping going, believing that together we can still move forward, even if the winds become tougher and change. So I want to thank you already, because for me, you are also here because we stand here for the fundamental democratic values that are behind gender equality. This is what this is really about. And unfortunately, we cannot just take it for granted anymore. We have to openly stand up for that, and this is what we're doing here. So let me thank you already, and I hope that this evening can be more than just an inspiration for you, more than just meeting new colleagues or loyal colleagues who do the talk together and the walk with us, but also, and it's an important moment to recharge our batteries. Let's recharge together as well tonight, because I know that so many of you stand for gender equality or speak up every day, and you sometimes may feel you're on your own in this. You're not. So let's use this evening also to recharge our batteries. Because to me, empowering journey, it's about so much more than just empowering women. I even think there's a misunderstanding when we sometimes talk about women empowerment. There's still narratives that say women, have to break the glass ceiling. When I started my career at the European Commission 15 years ago, there was still this talk of, come on, women, you just need to become a bit more confident, step forward, we're going to support you to become a bit more assertive so that you speak louder, maybe lower your voice. And I think that when we still say women have to break the glass ceiling, this image that is so enshrined in our minds, to me it has two major flaws. Let's be critical to ourselves. The first flaw to me is that we seem to put the burden often entirely on women to adapt and to change or to become tougher and stronger and more assertive. We send them to women leadership academies so that they can also finally make it one day and be part of that club of decision makers in the boardrooms. And the second flaw that is clear is that often we leave men out of our conversation like this. When we say women have to break the glass ceiling, it suggests to many men that I talk to that their only role is to basically step aside and make space for women, right? Basically give up power. And who wants that? It's not very attractive for many men, and that's also why many men tell me it's a women's issue, it's not my topic. And today, with my keynote here for you, I want to broaden the picture a little bit, because women empowerment is also about men, and it is about how we work together in our organization. When women rise, companies rise, and men will rise with them. It's not a zero-sum game or some trade-off. It's something that we can only do together, and when we do, we will also benefit together. Let's begin with the business case that I'm sure you are all aware of, because diversity is really not a nice to have or some feel-good topic as it is sometimes portrayed. It's also not a gesture to women. I want to make that very clear, and anyone else who's not yet represented, because, you know, it's a strategic decision. That's why you are all here, especially in economically tough times. And this goes out, by the way, to everybody who says, you know, we have a war in Ukraine, we have a conflict in the Middle East now, we have, you know, international trade challenges. We really have more important things to do now, or more urgent things to do than diversity. You may have heard these arguments as well in the past months and years. And I want to come back to the fact that it's a strategic competitiveness issue. It's an economic topic to talk about women empowerment, diversity, and inclusion. According to the European Institute for Gender Equality, EIGE, improving gender equality in the European Union could increase our GDP per capita by 10% by 2050, in 25 years. That is trillions of euros in our economic growth. So it's not just a warm and nice idea. There is some concrete evidence. Every year, McKinsey does the study and shows that organizations with gender diverse leadership teams, they are about 60% more likely to be more profitable than those with fewer women at the top. So companies with more diverse teams, they outperform their peers financially. So let's be very clear. It means for companies that ignore diversity or underestimate the topic, especially at these times here, or say that we have more important things to do, and even call back their resources on gender equality, diversity, they're not just missing an opportunity, they are also risking falling behind, because the crisis will be over one day and we still want to have the talents in our teams, right? So gender equality is not a favor to women, it's a competitive advantage, because diverse teams make better decisions, they reduce the blind spots, they consider more perspectives, the perspectives of 50% of our society. And we need these perspectives, especially as we are having groundbreaking technological transformations with AI at the moment, geopolitical instability and a climate crisis. We need to hear all perspectives to move forward in Europe. So when women rise, companies rise, governments rise, teams rise, and still the figures are not yet there. Across the European Union, women only hold 1/3 of parliamentary seats. In my home country, Germany, and since the last elections a year ago, the number of women, the share of women in national parliament has even decreased. So it's also the first time that when we think that we're making progress and it's becoming better, we're at a time at the moment when things are also getting worse again. We need to look at that. On corporate boards of the largest listed companies in the EU, women make up roughly 35%. It's looking good, but we see also that quotas, they do work. We see it in France, for example. Also in my home country, Germany, many of the corporate boards of the publicly listed companies still only have one woman on the board. And still some will say, come on, that's pretty good, right? We have come so far. There is no problem really. I want to shed the light tonight on the fact that representation is not necessarily power. Not always. What the numbers don't show and what many underestimate are the invisible barriers to power. And I want to talk about that today. The daily experience of women in these roles, how tough it can be to be the only woman in many meeting rooms, the looks, the intimidating interruptions, the scanning of our bodies, intimidating comments, jokes, or well-meant compliments. I know that for sure because in my project, Let's Just Be Imperfect Ladies, I've spoken and worked with more than 500 women in the last 5 years. And I have also been one of these women in the past in a leadership position, and I want to share my story with you as well tonight, because I was a young woman at the European Commission, and I was one of these women who went to women empowerment trainings, and I know many of you have probably too. I was 29 years old, and I was already a spokesperson in Brussels in the big press room, representing the European Commission to the press, to the international press. And a year later, I became head of communication at the European Commission in Berlin office. And as a young media advisor there, I was often in male-dominated work environments, media, journalism, my counterparts in the German government. It was a very conservative environment, and I wanted to learn how to become tougher. I wanted to learn how to become more dominant, less emotional, and perhaps a bit less sensitive and funny and witty as I actually am. Because yes, it was a very male-dominated work environment, and often I got greeted with the fact, hello, Miss Banner, so you are the assistant, right? Or, you must be the intern. Many women often get underestimated, and I said, no, I'm the spokesperson, or I'm your counterpart today in the meeting. I'm looking forward to our negotiations. And still, I was even looking up to my male colleagues. I wanted to be a bit more like them, you know, clearer, bold, a bit more rational or Teflon style, having this poker face, especially when I was speaking to the media. So in reality, I look back today, and I was coming to work every day wearing a mask. I had this professional mask on to come across as tougher and more assertive than I actually was. I was young, I was a woman, and in reality, every day I was trying to hide a little bit that I was young and that I was a woman. I even dressed up like a grandma, to be honest, in my 20s, and I know that when we're in our 20s and 30s, we're still looking for our clothing style and identity, but when I look back at the pictures from the time, I feel I look much older than today. I'm 41 today. And at the time, you know, I wore these thick conservative blazers, tights and skirts. And to be honest, I look back and I have compassion with my younger self. Please don't blame yourself in case you are also wearing this protective armor sometimes. This clothing was my protection to feel safe. And even when the photographer came to our office, you know, when the photographer comes and does new team pictures for the website, I was 32 at the time, and I was in a management position at the European Commission, my counterparts in the German government, and I said to the photographer when he came along, you know, I looked at the camera like this. And I said to him, I want to be taken seriously. I don't want to smile on the picture, you know. So I was like, super serious. And I noticed that the photographer wasn't really happy with the pictures. He's like, come on, just relax and be natural. And I was like, you know, like this. And I came home with the different, you know, different prototypes of the photos to choose one. And I asked my boyfriend at the time, which one should I take? And he's like, of course, the one where you're smiling or where you're like this, because you look at you, you're more relaxed, you're more authentic. I can really see you and you're more approachable. I look back today, and again, in case you can relate to that story or any of those moments, let's have compassion, let's not blame ourselves, because all I wanted was to be taken seriously. All I wanted was to be seen and heard for the competence and the talent and the potential that I had. I wanted to be seen as a peer. And I know how many women are doing the same every day in their job. It's taking a lot of energy from us every day. And so I did sign up to the women empowerment trainings at the time. And I remember one training in Brussels. We were 8 women around a table, and we all wanted to learn how to come across as a bit tougher for our career paths. And I remember I had this moment when, you know, when we sometimes go inside, I looked around the table and I looked at the women in my training, and I was like, wow, these are all so impressive women. They are all so strong to me. And yet we are learning here how to change. Is it possible that they're trying to teach here how we can survive in this leadership jungle that is up there, that has mostly been in our history created by men and perhaps also designed for the strengths of other men? rather than, why don't you actually support us here and help us with our confidence in the very natural leadership qualities that we already have as women? My case, for example, is I'm very sensitive. My sensitivity is also my fine antennas for reading a room or knowing what my counterpart may need in a negotiation. My empathy, my ability to create connection and win-win situations. Today, I believe that women don't need empowerment, really. They don't need to become tougher or more assertive or stronger to make it in their career. Women are already strong, so strong. Look at the incredible superpowers that so many women bring to the workplace naturally every day. Their empathy, their emotional intelligence, being able to connect to people, their ability to build alliances very easily. Many women see power in a more horizontal way, whereas our hierarchies, most of our organizations are built in a vertical way, our hierarchies and organigrams. You know, you are above me and I'm below you. Whereas women see power often as they're open to share power. They want to create win-win situations instead of wanting to be the one winner. To me, these are all incredible and hardcore leadership qualities. But unfortunately, we do not reward them in the same way as we reward typically masculine strengths, competitiveness, risk-taking, a winner mentality, a problem-solution mindset, a more rational approach to power. And when I say masculine and feminine here on stage today, I don't necessarily mean men and women. I identify myself as a woman, and still I believe I have a mix of masculine and feminine qualities and strengths in me. We all have a mix in us, and there's a balance. But isn't it a coincidence that we call the typically feminine qualities in the workplace, people-centered leadership, empathy, soft skills in our business trainings, right? I don't know about you, but I have a communication background, and I'm like, that really sounds like nice to have. Nice add-on, but if you really want to make it in your career, you better be a tough cookie, right? You better always be visible. You need to toughen up. I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but what I don't see is balance in the workplace, in the way that we reward them in terms of positions, posts, projects, visibility, pay, pension, bonus. So I also think it's super important in today's time, these feminine superpowers. Aren't they exactly actually the leadership skills that we really need right now? At a time when we see so many strong men and women shout. I believe, in politics and government, I believe we need even more leaders who are warm again, who rebalance exactly that. We may think that we need to respond with loudness and coldness and toughness, but what we actually need and what I believe the world is craving for at this time is connection, empathy, kindness, humbleness in leadership again. And that's why I want to call you, all of you, in case you feel like I'm more of a sensitive person, I'm actually quite caring and kind. Please hear this. Your qualities are actually leadership qualities. They are very, very powerful, and they bring people together again in these times that are so divisive. They make others feel seen in the workplace. They create trust and safety again. And that's why we need you right now with your warmth and empathy and kindness. Your qualities are hardcore leadership qualities that I believe are needed at the top of every organization, every team, at the top of every country. So let us stop fixing women. Let's fix our work culture that we reward in the workplace. Let's look at our work culture that seems to over-reward typically masculine leadership qualities when it comes to promotions, pay, visibility. And when we see something like that, I always see myself as an observer. I always want to know when I felt discriminated or intimidated in the workplace. I always wanted to know, where does this come from? And let's look at how far we have also come in the last decades alone. We've heard earlier today how much in the last decades women's rights have increased so much. Boardrooms in the 70s and 80s, of course, they were mostly all male, right? Up until 50 years ago, there were only men in decision-making powers in our society, most of all. And if we really look at history a bit deeper, it's in the last not only decades, but centuries, zillion years, that men have been the one who have decided how our society works, how decisions are being taken, what procedures we do. I call them the unwritten rules of power, the unwritten rules of success. And I don't blame anyone. They have been designed by men, of course, for the strengths of other men, probably, right? So, there were also women in these rooms, but these women were the ones in supportive roles. They were serving the coffee, or they were taking the notes, or cleaning up afterwards. And now, very, very fast, in the last 50 years alone, 2 generations only, women are now sitting at those tables as the CEOs, as the board members, as the chairwomen, as the presidents of their organizations, as prime ministers. Yes, so we have the numbers now, but let's not be fooled. When these women enter these rooms of power, the atmosphere, the unwritten rules, these informal rules of power, they have barely changed. That is my experience, and that is the experience of every woman I work with in my leadership trainings. The subtle looks. Sometimes there's a different tone when you enter the room. There's often a scanning of our clothing, our body. There's sometimes a dominant tone, intimidating gestures or body poses. Often not intended, not at all, not intended to be intimidated. But still, women are mostly rewarded when they're in supportive roles in their careers, secretary, assistant, But as soon as women get into power positions, my personal experience is that many men, I could see it and feel it by getting those sexist comments or intimidating remarks or tone of voice. Sometimes it's just in the eyes. That many men in my surroundings did not have an experience, a professional experience of communicating with me when I'm not in a supportive role, but when I'm their counterpart. So these are the invisible barriers to power that happen in almost every meeting room, probably also in your organization. And they are so subtle, but they're invisible also for many men who say to me, but we're done, come on, don't exaggerate. Because I understand many white heterosexual men have never been sexually discriminated. They don't have this experience in their life on the bus, in the streets, in a meeting room. So let's communicate about it. Let's create safe spaces where we can actually create an open space where we can talk about that. We have the numbers now of women in these positions, but it's about more than just the numbers. Because every day these subtle gestures of power, these in-between moments, they still make many women like me at the time when I was younger think, oh, it must be me. Did I just say something wrong? Or maybe I should have prepared better, or I shouldn't have worn this outfit today. Most women projected back at themselves, doubting themselves, holding back their ideas, holding back their potential. But here's my message, in case you are a woman or anyone who has ever felt like this, that nothing is wrong with you. If ever you get to feel this way again, that something may be wrong with you in such a situation, then something is wrong with the room. Something is wrong with the outdated work culture there. I was holding back my ideas so many times. I felt intimidated so many times because I did not see what strengths I already brought to the workplace. And I don't want any young woman to feel like that anymore and to hold back their ideas, to dim her light or her potential in this way. And that's why I tell all the women who come to my workshops now to not toughen up, to not lower their voice to be taken seriously or to change their style in the workplace. I rather invite them to dare to be imperfect, authentic, feminine, just the way they are, to lead and to find their authentic leadership style and to believe in that. Even if they may be the only one or the first one in their company or in their team, especially in very male-dominated technical sectors, to look like this, to speak like this, to have this body shape or this hairstyle or this creaky voice or sexual identity, ethnic background, queerness, menstruation cramps. Sometimes we are the first one to lead like this. And I sometimes say, sometimes when we're the first one, we women have to kind of come into the room and roll out our own red carpet in front of us as we are presenting and speaking, because nobody else has done it for us. We have to kind of create our own stage for that. But please do not underestimate the moment you are authentic, you're showing up just the way you are with your background, how inspiring that will be for at least one other person in the room. And I only have the courage to say that today because other women rolled out my red carpet today so that I can say this. Let's trust that you are also rolling out the red carpet for so many who come after you. And so today, in my work today, I put down my mask, my professional mask. I aligned my personality, my authentic self. I'm so sensitive, warm, funny, with my work. And I'm in my authentic feminine leadership. And I think this is a very, very strong leadership. And so I want to say one more time that we need to fix our work culture that may not see that as strong yet, rather than women. And that's why I believe, and this is my final point today, that we need to support and empower men too. I call it, in my lighthearted way, that we also need men empowerment in this situation, in this transition and change. Remember, the second flaw that I mentioned in the beginning is that many men don't really feel part of our conversation here today. For many men, gender equality or even the word quotas or feminism, I just heard it at a conference last week when somebody said, when I hear feminism, it's a threat. Women empowerment, many men hear, well, women are now saying it's our turn now, you have to step aside, make space for us. And that, of course, creates so much pressure on many men. Many men also tell me, I don't really even know how to position myself in my career anymore. I don't have the words to address these things in the workplace. It's a women's issue, it's not my topic. But when we feel excluded, right, we all know the experience of not being part of it, and this is what I see with many of my male friends and colleagues, we withdraw. We don't act anymore, we're passive, we avoid. And we don't want that. We need men and we want you in the room, and that's why I want to inspire you today and all of you that you are also part of this conversation of this invitation to be drivers of change. And I believe that there's a real opportunity there, because in reality, the glass ceiling cannot be broken by women by coming and pushing from below. In reality, the glass ceiling can only be opened up from above by those leaders who are already there above the glass ceiling. And as we have heard, they are still mostly men in these positions. They have the political, the financial, the economic power to change what is normal. And I believe there is so much more in there for men. And I want to say that as organizations, I want to invite us to also have resources to support men in that, to have the vocabulary, the inclusive leadership skills, the communication skills, to drive this change and to be part of that, not bystanders, or even worse, if we lose them as allies, we cannot just hope for their understanding, I think. This is why I believe we need men empowerment, so that men, and so many impressive men that I worked with, also have the confidence to be confident leaders and chairpersons of boards when the colors and the genders and the identities around the boardrooms change. So that men are still confident when we have more diverse teams, and that they can step forward as leaders who shape that, so that they have the courage to break old patterns that also didn't serve them. I think there's a huge opportunity in here for men to change and challenge what a successful leader looks like. Many men tell me quietly, I don't like this alpha culture either, that I have to try to be so dominant and there's so much pressure on me. It's such a narrow definition of who is successful. So much pressure from this alpha culture to be tough and to always have all the answers. There are masculinity experts like the Dutch author Jens van Tricht who argue that gender equality can also liberate men from these patterns, from these rigid role expectations that harm relationships and often mental health. It opens a space to men for men to lead, as fathers who want to pick up their kids early, as part-time bosses, or as managers who share leadership positions, as sensitive men who lead strongly but who are still open about their struggles or perhaps mental health struggles and still be seen as successful. To me, that is true diversity if we get there, that we also see different men succeeding. The freedom for men to redefine leadership on their own terms. Imagine them having the confidence to welcome so many different ways of being powerful into the workplace. So, after this, what do we do now? I have messages and suggestions now to finish my proposals for men, for women, and if you identify as a non-binary person, I'm sure you will also find yourself in there. And for us as organizations, what can we do now? For women, I want to say, that's my message, you are already strong. Now, our number one job as women is to recognize that in ourselves, to see that as superpowers, what we may have felt in the past because we have constantly been told you are too emotional, you are too sensitive, that this is actually, what if this may be your superpower that we need so dearly in the workplace. So it's our invitation to ourselves to start seeing that and recognize it and cherish that. And of course, in the workplace, that we also recognize that in other colleagues that may be on our team, recognize that in the workplace. Our fine antennas, our ability to build bridges. This is something that women often do silently, just on the side in the workplace, taking care of everybody, bringing the cookies, we sometimes belittle that or smile about that. Mary has brought the cookies again. Nice. Yeah, but Mary is a mental health champion at the workplace. She passes along every office and says, hey, do you want a cookie? It means, how are you? Checking in with everybody. These are I call that the care work at the office. Many women also take the mental load at the office, holding teams together, and we need to reward that. It's so many hours of work as well. That is leadership work. So thank you, ladies, for shining just the way you are, in your authentic way, perhaps in your feminine way. When you do that, you're rolling out the red carpet for so many more who may be able and have the courage to show up after you. You're changing what is normal when we do that. And my message for all men is, I want to say thank you for listening to women about their experience. Thank you for asking them about their experience and believing them. So many women have the experience that, you're exaggerating, or, don't be so sensitive. Thank you for believing women when they share they didn't feel comfortable in this situation, asking them and using your position to give them space. This is what we do in male allyship trainings. I have done some of them, and the men who participated said afterwards, I don't feel belittled being a male ally. I feel so much stronger in my leadership qualities because I'm now able to see so much more of what is going on in our meeting rooms. Thank you for using this as a powerful opportunity for you as well to be a driver of change, a unique opportunity to redefine successful leadership. So let's also support men in that. And for us as organizations, what can we do at structural level? That is such a key. Number one, make it a management topic, a leadership topic. Do not delegate only to HR or say, we have a diversity, equity, inclusion officer. It's done. They're taking care of that tick box. Gender equality, diversity is an everyday journey. happens in every meeting, in every email, in every conversation, in the boardroom, everywhere in our organization. So we as leaders can shape that as decision makers every day. And let me also say this, because I know that for many it is also a new experience, new territory. And I say that especially for the more senior leaders who say, I really don't know how to approach that. I see you, I hear you on sometimes it's so hard to find the right words and the right tone. And I want to say it's okay not to have all the answers. It's okay not to know exactly the way forward. It's okay to ask questions and to have a million questions about that. And to say, I'm a learner. I want to learn from you. I want to understand better. That to me is hardcore leadership again. This attitude and inner intention of I want to grow, I want to learn here, I have something to learn and it's going to benefit my leadership. It's okay for any diversity inclusion process to be bumpy. It's not a linear road. It's messy, it's maybe imperfect, maybe needs another conversation. But it's about courage, curiosity, showing up, sometimes only listening is already to me so inspiring when I see managers doing that. So thank you for that, being part of that journey. So my second step here for organizations is to treat diversity not as a policy, but as a skill. When we putting it into the skill chapter, then it's not just a nice to have, it's about inclusive leadership skills, inclusive communication skills, diversity management skills, and we can reward our managers for these skills. We can reward our managers. I talked to some banks who include that in their bonus system. How much diversity do you have on your team? How much parent retention do you have? We can quantify that as KPIs, and we can reward different leadership styles. And finally, let's look at them, the unwritten rules of success. This is the hard questions, really difficult to grasp, but let's be critical to ourselves, open. Who gets the visibility in meetings? Who gets interrupted and who interrupts? Who speaks? Who has organized the Christmas party again or the birthday card that is going around? Let's recognize different styles of leadership that are going on, starting to see that. Let's be critical about who's seen as a leader. Is it the one who's the most visible and always present in the office? Or can it also be the part-time leader who has care duties at home, but who's an incredible manager because of that? So let's recognize that leadership comes in so many forms: empathetic, collaborative, attentive, strategic, not just always present or dominant. By rewarding diverse leadership styles, you are creating a culture where more people, women and men, everybody can thrive authentically. And when we create spaces where our colleagues can be authentic themselves, not wearing a mask to be someone, they can step into their full potential. There's open spaces for more ideas, more innovation, and more retainment, of course, of our staff. So let me close with this, coming back to the empowering journey. Women are certainly not lacking competence to be leaders. They're not lacking the strengths and the leadership qualities. They're all certainly not lacking ambition. What women mostly lack are environments that reward these natural leadership qualities. Let's change that. Let's look into our communication and our work culture, these unwritten rules of success. Let's not change women or blame men. It's not a trade-off or a zero-sum game where we try to replace men by women. The real goal, if we think about it, is that we create authentic workplaces where people can be themselves, open, and where everybody has a chance to thrive. So it will not come by accident. And especially at these times, I want to call us one more time to be active and loud about it. We need to take action and measures. We cannot just wait and hope anymore. And we may have to fight and defend these measures and these goals against a lot of criticism. So let's stand together in this. I want to thank you one more time for being on this journey. Thank you for your courage, doing this work, being part of that, speaking up for it, and building the future together. let's keep going. Thank you.
Vielen Dank, Helene. Vielen Dank. Many thanks for sharing these experiences with us, with all of us. I hope you enjoyed it. Just maybe a last question. You were talking about your personal experience. By then, when you were at the European Commission, then now you're more in a position where you give training and workshops. Maybe you can give us one or two more examples about the feedback you get, or maybe also what is lived in the companies.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, first of all, also for your recognition that we can have these conversations. What I was lacking as a young person in leadership roles was the spaces, safe spaces to talk about my experience. I often struggled because I thought I'm the only one doubting myself or struggling or thinking that I'm not yet good enough. I know that all of us are having these struggles, no matter our gender identity. And so what I realized once I did my first training for free during the pandemic, just to test my ideas, was the women were coming to my trainings and they were basically, so many numbers, I really underestimated the impact. And they said, oh, it feels so good to talk about this and to have a safe space and to feel, I thought I was alone with this. So I feel, and that's my feedback, creating spaces where we can just exchange. Not every training has to have a concrete result as a new skill. Sometimes in our organizations, it's just helpful to create talking spaces where people can safely open up, also as managers. The same goes for many men. I feel that many men are holding themselves back or not going forward because in reality, they're very frustrated or insecure as well, and they don't have safe spaces to even say something critical about or their worries or doubts about gender equality either. So we may even have to create safe spaces for that too, where they can first vent perhaps also frustration of why they didn't get the post, but a woman did. I know so many men who do that in silence and who eat that frustration in them. So the overall feedback that I get from holding these trainings for men and for women, and sometimes in mixed groups, is a relief. Oh, we can talk about these in-between moments, about these things, the subtle things that I only feel, that are so difficult to find words for. So this is always a great opportunity, and I want to encourage you to invest the time and resources and good moderation to create such spaces. Yeah, thank you.
When you see the audience here in Luxembourg, and I know you assisted also to our conferences at the beginning, what do you take home with you when you leave tomorrow?
First of all, thank you for organizing this. Again, I don't take it for granted. I also appreciate so much that there are so many businesses, sectors here reunited. I know how European Luxembourg is, so this is creating ripple effects. I know also for your networks. And again, I want to say, because I feel it very, very strongly in Berlin, in the political debates, that there are certain people today who also say this openly, who don't want these conferences to take place anymore. They don't want to call us to call for gender equality or women's rights. So thank you for creating this safe space. It's unfortunately we cannot take it for granted anymore, and it's even more important to come together.
Yeah, as you said, and we were talking before about it, that there are many programs all over the world, DEI programs that are now just dismissed because of different politics, different change in the world, and that's why I think it's so important. And so thank you again that you have been here.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, all of you, and I'm still here. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Vielen Dank.